What would you do if you could decide exactly where every radio signal is coming from? What would you do with it? Would you sit on that technology or find a way to commercialize it? Would you create a company that would be able to mine that data and sell it? Or would you just do nothing? Today we'll be talking about Kleos Space, the company that has managed to find a way to do precisely this. And as you may have expected, Kleos Space isn't sitting on this knowledge. Instead, they're doing something with it. So let's find out on this episode of Super Freaky Science. First off, what's Kleos Space? What are they doing, and why are they important? Well, to put it straightforwardly, Kleos Space is a space-powered radiofrequency resonance data provider. What this bunch of words simply means is that Kleos gathers radio data and sells it to the highest bidder. Well, not the highest bidder, just the highest US sanctioned bidder. Kleos Space will not be selling radio data to the Chinese Communist Party. That's not how things work on the US side of the pond. Which is weird, especially given the fact that Kleos Space is a Luxembourg-based company. So it's not strictly American. Anyway, the journey of Kleos Space into the world of worldwide radio spying started in 2018. In 2018, Kleos Space realised its prospectus to raise $11 million in an initial public offering ahead of a mid-year ASX listing. The plan was simple. The company would commission a Danish nanosat company called GomSpace to build miniature satellites. These satellites will then be used to locate mobile phones, maritime radio and sat phone signals. While other satellites map out the world in a visual manner, that is, with the use of satellite imagery and pictures, these satellites will render a vision of the world in radio form. That is, the world would be rendered as a map of radio signals. Which, as you expect, would look very cool. But Kleos isn't in this business to create data that looks good. They also want to create data that will be useful. The rendered map will enable people to interpret it to pinpoint the position of any vessel that uses radio signals in obscure areas. For example, a cluster of radio signals in the same area would be indistinguishable. However, a lone radio signal, or two, right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, that's a clear sign of a vessel. Why would these data be important, you ask? Well, it's pretty simple. This data would make it easier for law enforcement to locate ships of undesirable users such as drugs and people smugglers, terrorists, pirates, illegal fishermen, and those in need of search and rescue. The important question is, how reliable will this system be? How accurately would it be able to track anything? The answer in this case seems to be very accurately. Kleos Space says that the system will be able to track the activity of individuals or assets to about 100 meters of their location without reliance on any other systems. The next obvious question, of course, is this: could we not do this before? Because tracking radio signals seems like something we've generally been able to do for at least 10 years. And it's true, tracking radio signals isn't new technology. Kleos Space didn't just invent this tech. However, solutions that existed before have been long regarded as inadequate. Current land-based radio tracking tech is very expensive, technically limited by range, and is subject to counter threats. These are all limitations that a satellite in the sky easily bypasses. During its first week of announcing these plans, the company was able to raise $2.2 million in seed funding. And this was done within just 48 hours. When moves like that are made in the market, you better sit up and listen. What are these satellites like? When most people think of satellites, they usually make the mistake of thinking of huge dishes that are big enough to bounce signals off. But that's wrong. The textbook meaning of satellite means an artificial body placed in orbit around the Earth or Moon or other planets to collect information or for communication. You'd notice that the textbook definition is completely silent about the size a satellite is supposed to be. What this means, of course, is that a satellite can be as big as 100 Teslas or as small as a shoebox. And the satellites that Kleos Space plans on using to collect this information are precisely that small. The initial fleet of satellites consists of 4 nanosatellites built by GomSpace. Cryospace plans to bring the overall fleet of satellites to around 20. This will allow the company to capture enough data to reliably sell. But why would Cryospace not make their satellites themselves? That would seem like the right plan, wouldn't it? Well, there's a reason for that. According to Kleos Space, any delays in making the satellites may have a materially adverse effect on Kleos' business, financial performance and reputation. So, yeah, they aren't making their satellites because the stakes are high and won't look pretty from all the business points of view. If that's true, why are they then contracting such a vital part of their program to another entity? Couldn't that fail as well? Well, it could. And Kleos Space knows this very well. In fact, in their prospectus, they note that getting GomSpace to make their satellites is a business risk. So why are they doing it? The answer's obvious. The likelihood of GomSpace messing up the timeline and making the satellite is lower than the likelihood of Kleos Space messing it up. GomSpace is a far more experienced entity than Kleos Space, as it was founded in 2007. That makes it at least 10 years older than Kleos Space. They have a lot more experience with product development than Cryospace and are better equipped to bring this important part of the program to the market. Importantly, if GomSpace fails, it's GomSpace's failure, not so much Kleos Space's. Kleos Space would be able to manage the PR fallout from such an investment by simply saying that GomSpace is the failing party, not them. In addition to this, Kleos Space would be able to recoup at least part of their investment if GomSpace refuses to satisfy the terms of their contract. So, in terms of business, contracting the satellite production to GomSpace is a smart business move. How will it be unlaunched? Kleos Space has the money, the satellites, and the business plan, but they still need a way to get their entire fleet in the sky. Since the company doesn't have any rockets, they need to contract this part of their operation out. The launch itself will be managed and done by Rocket Labs, a US-based company. What will it be used for? That should be obvious by now, but if it wasn't, well, Kleos Space plans on collecting all that data and doing one thing with it: selling it to the highest bidder. There's a lot of talk about companies like Google and Facebook collecting and selling people's data covertly, but Kleos isn't even covert about their business model. They are in the business of spying on the world, collecting important data and selling it to the highest bidder. This may sound sort of illegal, but it's not in the least. Who will the data be sold to? Well, the possibilities are unlimited. First off, Kleos Space plans to disrupt an industry called the intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance market. It may sound fancy, but it's just a complicated name for the global spy industry. In 2015, the industry was worth around $41 billion. It's projected that the industry will grow to be worth around $53 billion by 2020, and it's no surprise that Kleos Space wants a huge chunk of this industry. If their satellite's launch is successful and can collect the data they say they can, they may very well get their wish. They may have a huge chunk of this revenue sitting pretty in the bank. But that's only if it works. Already, Victoria Falls Limited, a defence contractor in the US, has agreed with Kleos Space to use data from its satellites. The data will be used by Victoria Falls to beef up their defence offerings and research proposals. And this is just the tip of the business iceberg. Other companies and agencies are lining up to use the data that Cryospace will provide. Cryospace already has eyes on defence, regulatory and commercial fishing and shipping sectors. Everyone will want their data, and Cryospace will be willing to sell. That's it guys, if you enjoyed this video about space, spyware, satellites the size of actual shoeboxes, data, and billions of dollars people are willing to pay for them, well, you really have to smash that like and subscribe button. If you don't, we'll tell the guys at Cryospace to steal all your radio data, and we'll track you down, get your computer, and make sure to force you to subscribe. That's a promise, not a threat. Anyway, remember to have a good day. Goodbye.